Special thank you to our sponsor, iGenX. iGenX isn't just a small business. It's a powerhouse ally ready to tackle your agency's toughest tech challenges head on. Specializing in low-code, no-code solutions, advanced analytics, and project management, iGenX is your go-to partner for both federal and commercial projects. But what sets iGenX apart? As a Salesforce Summit-level partner, the company brings unparalleled expertise across the entire Salesforce ecosystem. From MuleSoft and Einstein and Tableau, the expert teams at iGenX don't just build solutions, they engineer them, crafting robust data pipelines and creating stunning visualizations that drive real results. At iGenX, success isn't just a goal, it's a promise. The team is dedicated to delivering measurable benefits that transform your operations. Ready to partner with iGenX? Contact the team at info@igenx.com, spelled info@eigenx.com.
What are my pet peeves? And I would say the biggest one for me is industry engagement and either the fear on the part of the government to talk to industry. And that could be the program office or CEOs themselves, or industry engaging with the government in a meaningful way that doesn't involve a room full of lawyers.
Welcome to GovCom Unfiltered, where your journey through the labyrinth of federal contracting begins. I'm Alexa Choi, your guide and host on this epic adventure. Here, we dive deep into the heart of government contracting, shedding light on the heroic tales of those who navigate its complex terrain. Our mission? To bring you closer to the action, revealing the critical steps, triumphant victories, and occasional pitfalls that our intrepid adventurers face. Your journey into the world of government contracting starts now, and we could not be happier to have you with us. Let's embark on this adventure together.
Thank you for joining us today. Our guest is Katherine Vultaggio, Contracting Officer Extraordinaire, most famous for putting together Department of State Evolve. I've been wanting to talk to you for, I don't know, ever. You're probably one of my LinkedIn Women Crush Wednesdays. So I'm just like super excited to be here talking to you today, and thank you for taking the time. Thank you for making the time. I think this is going to be a good talk. So far, I think you're my first actual acting contracting officer on the call. So welcome.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for having me. Likewise, I'm a big fangirl. You're the person that popped up on LinkedIn for me the most. And I'm like, she does real talk. I love her. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for asking me to come on.
Absolutely. Okay, perfect. So first of all, tell us about you. How did you get here? What parts of your journey can you share with us? And what do you do?
So becoming a contracting officer was kind of a circuitous route. I am a musician by trade. I started doing music in the Marine Corps, which was a lot of fun. It was great. But I got into the government and started a family. I actually took a step down to a GS7 just to get into contracting. I was a core by being voluntold in my office at USGS, and I'll never forget the core training course I took. These CEOs came in, and I thought they were like rock stars. They walked in with their FAR, with all the tabs in there, and they knew where to find the answers to every question in class. And I was just like, okay, where do I sign up? How do I do that? So that's kind of where I got my start.
So you were in the Marine Corps, like you were in the Marine Corps?
Yes, I am a Marine Corps veteran, yes.
Yay, that's awesome. Thank you for your service. So what parts about your role inspire you the most? Do you think of yourself like a rock star now because you're like FAR Part 19 and you know exactly what that means? Or, or have you kind of like figured out that like what the role entails? And I'm sure there are some parts of it that are spectacularly sexy, and then there are a lot of parts that are not sexy.
I would say it's like 99% not sexy, but that's part of why I like it so much. My current role, the fact that I get to interact with world-class leadership, the folks that I work with are intelligent, humble, and true servant leaders. So that's what makes me nerd out about going to work every day. And being in my role, what motivates me to keep going and why I do what I do is because I can help. I can affect positive change with enthusiastic support of my leadership. So it makes me enjoy what I do every day.
So this is the real burning question, which is not on the list, sorry. It just kind of like popped into my head. It's like, a lot of people when they enter government contracting, they think, oh, I'm gonna go and gonna talk to the contracting officer. It's gonna be great. But and I both know that, requirements come to you from the program office. So how do you facilitate the conversations between the government program offices, the contracting community, and then the contract itself? Like, how do you make sure that the information flow is constantly moving?
That's a good way to frame it, constantly moving, because it doesn't start and end at any one point during the acquisition life cycle. In fact, it's a big part of what makes our jobs better. I was trying to think of, something a little more spicy to share with you in terms of, what are my pet peeves? And I would say the biggest one for me is industry engagement, and either the fear on the part of the government to talk to industry, and that could be the program office or COs themselves, or industry engaging with the government in a meaningful way that doesn't involve a room full of lawyers. And I would say that is a big part of making, especially larger efforts, but any effort a success, is connecting the program office to the right vendors, getting the right people in the room, limiting the amount of time that contractors spend on cold calls and limiting the amount of time your program receives those cold calls. Cold calls are fine as long as it's relevant. So, creating a space for folks to talk freely, and, let's not wait till we get to a solicitation, because then we can't talk as freely. Let's talk long before that, when our issues or our problems we're trying to solve are an idea and an emerging requirement. And then we can talk about whatever we want. And the more we do that, the better our requirements are going to be, the more the vendors are able to give us competitive pricing and good solutions. And, in the long run, everybody wins.
So, Katherine, now you're going into like my dream world of utopia, where we actually talk early and often. And so is there a way, and because right now you're working for Department of Commerce, right? And I know
Yes.
that you're sort of aligned to a big, I guess you could call it an agency-wide BPA, right? I mean, for all, I guess, intents and purposes.
We have several of those, yeah.
So at what point do you get notified that some of your program offices are looking to purchase things, and that way you could start like a reverse industry day and start these conversations? I mean, I guess it's not really a reverse industry, it's like an actual industry day. If we put it on, it's a reverse industry day. If you do it, it's an actual industry day. But like, what steps is your agency taking to actually make this a reality rather than like a pipe dream?
That's a great question. So I had the joy of participating in the RFI town hall recently, that was hosted by ASBC, and
Yeah, the
had that
one. That was awesome.
Yes. Yeah, we had the back and forth conversation with vendors, real time, real talk, asking good questions. I think that's the important piece, is creating that environment for that conversation to happen. So we are looking at commerce and in ESA, Enterprise Services Acquisition, where I work, to create that as kind of a normal, at least yearly thing, where we can host a town hall style event to bring in contractors to listen to those emerging problem sets. We can invite our customers to talk about those things that aren't yet on the forecast. Let's talk about what's really coming down the pipeline, and that way the vendors that are present and having that conversation can reach out to the right people to say, hey, I've got ideas for you. and vice versa for our customer to help industry understand what it is that they do as well. Just kind of create some transparency there.
I love a town hall idea. It's so awesome. Like if your program offices were like in a big hall and they were sitting at their different booths, you know who does this really, really well? US Transcom used to have like an event where they would invite industry to, the only problem was it was like on a base. You had to actually go to someplace that
Yeah.
you
I'm
actually,
all about the virtual events. Ever since
yeah.
COVID, I'm like, I can run a good virtual event now.
Yes. Oh, this is a perfect segue over to Evolve. So you were the leading contracting officer at the Department of State for Evolve.
Mhm.
And I have to be honest, I think that is where I started to know who you are and really admire the way that you were very forward leaning with the way that you were engaging with industry. And it made sense too, because what you were trying to do has not been done very often. Break apart, bring together all the pieces of contracts that were like all the way around, bring them together, and then recompete them in a way that brought all of industry along for the ride and without getting a pre-award protest, which by the way didn't happen. So congrats.
Thank you. I can't take credit for much. I really owe everything that has been achieved to the team. It truly takes a village, but as you mentioned, that was part and parcel to my strategy to get the thing off the ground, was to engage industry, because if they weren't a part of it, they would probably just fight against it, just like anybody else.
Right.
They needed to be owners of it just as much as we were. In terms of making sure we understand how it works, how it's going to work, how it's set up. And of course, I can only speak to what's publicly available because I know there's an ongoing acquisition.
Yeah.
But I still very much believe in the concept of Evolve. It wasn't my concept, wasn't my idea. I was given this enormous opportunity to take the draft solicitation and make it a reality, which gave me an immense sense of purpose and pride. And I really did enjoy that. I learned so much along the way. Special shout out to Anna Ehrman, Oz Debut extraordinaire,
Herman,
who
yeah.
helped me navigate all of those intricacies with the small business rules and making sure that we gave small businesses a fair shake, and to create this concept of the contracting ecosystem for IT services, everything IT, while giving a good opportunity to small businesses to participate.
So folks listening to this podcast might not know what it is, so I'm going to just talk about it super high level quickly. So Evolve, basically probably the recompete of 6 or 7 contracts that supported the IT ecosystem for IRM, which is the IT office for all of the Department of State. So you have the different bureau agencies underneath of there. So you bring it all together, recompeting it, and then it was done in 5 different functional categories. And then large business and small business pieces to each one of the categories with go, no go factors. I was going to ask you about the whole orals, go, no go factors. We're starting to see on the contractor side a change in eval factors, which are really actually kind of helpful. So the days of like writing a 45-page tech prop and submitting it and wondering like, did anybody actually read page 32? I don't know. So that those days are kind of gone, and the government's actually doing a lot more down selects, being like, we're going to recommend you don't move forward with this. And I feel like that's really helpful. From your perspective, do you think orals, down selects, and kind of the way that Evolve was handled, like, do you think that was helpful for you on your side? Because I know from us on our side it was.
I would say not from the Evolve perspective, because I didn't participate in the down select process for that. I just helped set up the solicitation. But for other requirements that I managed, I was pleasantly surprised to see how well that voluntary down select process can work. As long as you're being transparent and giving vendors, good information, actionable information on, why they weren't the most competitive, and letting them know that they aren't the most competitive, while still giving them the opportunity to participate. If they really want to carry forward, if they really believe in what they've got, they can. But gosh, it saves everyone so much time and money, not just with the down select, but I'm a big fan as well of really paring back what we're asking for in submissions and
Right.
helping the program office understand that if you ask for it, you have to evaluate it. Every little last bit of it, what we ask for, we have to give due consideration. That takes time and resources. So
Right.
not only are we burdening the contractors with expending what little resources they have, especially if they're small business, on putting together these gigantic packages, but then we have to read through all of them. And at the end of the day, why don't we just focus on those distinguishing factors that really separate, who's going to be successful in this and who isn't going to have as good of a chance?
I really like that. I think as we see more AI tools being used to write the actual writing of proposals, so there's going to be more of them and they're going to look the same. The way the government's going to have to kind of evaluate is orals, down selects, and tech challenges, right? Show us, don't tell us.
Even before AI, I've always been about that. I'm like,
Yeah.
show me. And yeah, demos are awesome. I'd much rather see what you can do than hear you talk about it. If that makes sense.
Or read about it.
Right.
So one of the questions I'd sent to you yesterday was, I think I'm now looking at it, it's really actually a good question. So how do you balance internal politics? And I know that Department of State is sort of famous for it. But anywhere you go, anywhere that you work, even, I mean, especially at contractor side too, we all have politics at work. How do you balance the internal politics and serving the mission and, making sure that you stay aligned to what really matters?
So your keyword there is mission. The mission has to come first. My Marine Corps training and my experience as a CO has just drilled that into me. So it has to be a part of your DNA. And I would say, being a CEO has served me really well. First and foremost, I meet people where they are. That's where we start. It's a start of a conversation at the beginning of every acquisition. And regardless of pressures, and, you have a lot of customers where everything's an emergency. And we just talk it out and figure out what's going on. You have to approach it with a lot of humility. I actually really love working with horses, and it actually, the principles of horsemanship really transfer to working with people as well. When I go to the barn, I have to leave my ego, my agenda, and my baggage outside the fence. You can't take that into a training space with a horse. And it's the same way that I enter every room at work. It's not about ego. It's about getting the mission done and putting the building blocks together to figure out how to get there.
Right. And it's interesting that you said that. I could actually ride before I could walk, but nobody knows that about me. So this is the
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I grew up on a horse ranch, and it's a really interesting analogy that I don't think I've ever heard anybody use. But horses are large animals that are dangerous if you don't know, if you don't do exactly what you said. Approach them with some humility. Very cool, very cool. I love that. So right now are you the lead contracting officer for CATS?
I am not. That would be Courtney Palmer, who is one of my division directors. Love working with her. I'm just a figurehead who appreciates CATS for what it is, and I try to support and remove any barriers that I can to help them be successful.
So from a contracting perspective, I think I mean I was in charge of bid captures for my previous company. We no bid CATS during the bid process.
Okay.
And I feel like a lot of companies did, and I'm kind of curious to hear your opinion about this. CATS was another one of those vehicles that was similar to Evolve in some ways, that it pulled together a large set of requirements, right? It had like, you need to show past performance with this, and this. So on the contractor side, it required a lot of cohesive teaming, which teaming is a little bit like getting married. It's, you start out so great, so hopeful. And then and then JVs are even worse. It's like, it's a whole other set of, it's like being married for like 10 years, but actually having to live that life 2 years in. So I would love to hear your opinions on how CATS is going, like from your perspective. Because I know it kind of just kicked off, if I remember correctly. I'm starting to see task orders being awarded now for the first time. So how's it going? And how are you advertising to the different components in commerce that it exists? Because commerce has one of those unique agencies where like USPTO is totally different from NARA,
Yes.
I mean, not NARA, but NIST. And it's totally different from, it's like you have agencies that don't really share maybe the same operating mission, right? They might have different things that they're doing.
Yeah, I can get into that a little bit. So I was not aware of CATS before I came into this role. I was pleasantly surprised to see that they had this, off the ground and running, because, I came out of the environment of supporting Evolve and I loved the concept. And to see it successfully happening was very exciting. It is live for task order awards now. Those are rolling out. I was kind of disappointed. So I did a quick Google search and I saw some very strong criticism of CATS from Federal News Network, saying that this was going to basically, I guess, bottleneck off work from small businesses or companies at large. And I would say, I would offer another viewpoint. I think that's kind of a short-sighted way of looking at it. Similar to Evolve, I saw this as a way to catapult small businesses into growth, because they are getting a bigger bite of the apple in terms of those requirements that come through the pipeline at Commerce. And, hopefully graduate out or grow out of the category that they're in. To me, that's success. And CATS does have the ability to onboard new vendors to keep that supply chain rolling. So to me, it's a great vehicle. I will say that, as you mentioned, we have customers with these broad and diverse mission sets. We have all these bureaus and offices under Commerce, some of which you may not think logically even go together, but they're
Exactly.
here, right?
That's right.
So CATS is actually a mandatory source contract for customers under Office of the Secretary, OCIO. For other small bureaus and offices, it's a first consideration for use, so they need to consider it before going elsewhere. And then for the larger unique animals that have their own contracting shops, it's available for use for them. They don't have to use it, but they can. And I've actually seen quite a positive reaction from the customer base wanting to use this contract. We have a line out the door of PRs coming in to get onto this contract. So I would say that, all signs point to yes for now in terms of success internally. It's definitely been promoted internally, and I wouldn't even say promoted, just we've made our customers aware of what it is and what it supports. And we do that customer engagement, like you were mentioning, as far as, getting with our customers and making sure that they know who the vendors are, what the contract vehicles are. And there's a great support system on the program office side of the house. And I think that is what's been key to the success of the thing, is they have invested resources to provide the care and feeding for contract administration on their side of the house, creating templates and streamlining processes and really just making it easier to use, just like a lot of the other strategic sourcing initiatives and the managed services contracts that we have.
So when it comes to CATS, I'm kind of thinking back to another agency-wide BPA I was a part of, and that was SEC 1IT. And we had formed a team and bid and then won. But if you ever wanted to team with somebody that wasn't on the list of subcontractors that you had submitted when you won, you had to actually submit a formal request to the CL. So is CATS like that, or could you hypothetically team post-award?
I believe that there's flexibility there under CATS. I know under Evolve, it was, there was a strong
Yeah.
bit of language about having your dance card stay the same or ask permission otherwise. But yeah, CATS, I think you can team and subcontract pretty easily.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering about that because I think even, post-award, like how do you get solutions in the hands of people that might, if that's an easier acquisition path forward, then that's good to know for sure. I'm sure people listening to this would be like, oh, wait a second, let me go find the list of CATS awardees.
No, I personally like that concept just because we do have our contractors that are known quantities on the contract, but at the same time, they may not be the best in everything, and they may want to reach out to the best of the best to bring some solution in-house. So I like that flexibility.
Yeah, and also things are changing so fast, right? So, these big butts and seats contractors, they want to lean into innovation as well. Yeah, like there's gonna be the different components of commerce are going to be needing AI. They're going to be needing machine learning, and how do you connect the two, and where do you roll it out? What problems does it solve? And so I think, the dance card that was already lined up might not fit every need for the next 5-10 years, right? They're gonna be looking.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, that's the challenge of doing contracting for IT and then, yeah, having it good for 10 years. It has to be able to grow as time goes on or evolve. No pun intended.
has to evolve. Actually, I have to say, I've, been in the contracting space almost 20 years. That was one of the best acronyms of all time. It was awesome. Okay, I guess one of the questions I had was, how did you go from state to commerce? Was it somebody that you had worked with in the past, or did you see a job opening on USA Jobs and apply, or like, how did you go from one to the other?
Sure. So I was interested in a leadership role, having supported Evolve and built that team from scratch. I did all the hiring, all the connecting of stakeholders and getting the IPT together and getting things rolling. I was like, wow, I really can do this. It was a great catalyst for me to know what I'm capable of. And so I passively was looking for some type of leadership role, and the opportunity at Commerce was posted on USA Jobs, and I applied. And in my interview, I was really impressed that not only did I meet my future supervisor, but in the interview, I also met agency stakeholders, customers, the OSDBU, the Office of Acquisition Management senior leadership was there. And that just struck me. It spoke volumes about the agency and its values, that it wasn't just one person in a room, asking me some rote questions. It was a conversation, and it was all the folks that I would be working with, and that they had a stake in my selection as well. It made a very big impact on me. And the interview was actually more like a conversation to me than an interview. And that's kind of how I knew that I found my people, if that makes sense.
That's nice. I mean, I feel like going into any interview situation, it's, you're a little nervous, you don't know what they're going to ask, but you're also interviewing them as much. Well, what have we not talked about that you'd like to share with us?
Do I have anything I want to cover? I do have some notes. I think I wouldn't be a good CEO if I didn't. Oh, yeah. So the only thing that I was going to add is, again, you asked for something kind of spicy. Here's semi-spicy. So be kind to your contracting officers. I recently saw a meme. I love good humor, and I see some funny things here and there. But the meme talked about how CEOs are responsible for everything Plus, they're in abusive relationships with their customers and vendors. That was just like, sadly, it can look a lot like that. And it's like, none of that has to be true. We could have conversations, we could talk, and talking really does remove a lot of the work from the front end and the back end and contracting. If we just have frank conversations and really get out there and engage with each other, I think it solves a lot of issues. So that's my soapbox moment for you.
Federal proposals, your voice, less time, exceptional results. Voltron gives you the power of custom language models to reduce proposal development costs by 54% and start to finish submission time by 63%. Voltron is the only AI platform that synthesizes the valuable business development and capture information you obtain to write high-quality compliant proposal content specific to your company and each solicitation. Stop throwing it over the fence. Schedule a demo today at vultron.ai.
Ask you this because I think maybe some folks listening might not know. At what point in the acquisition process do you go into a black box? Is it post RFP? Is it post draft? Is it post I know the way I look at it is it's like there's a continuum of ability to talk and what you can say, and it gets like fully open. It gets like less, then no. But I don't know if that's true. I kind of made that up.
So it definitely changes once that solicitation goes live, because then we can't share information with one that we're not sharing with all, especially if there's something that's going to change or what have you. But it doesn't mean we stop talking. We have the questions and answers period. I encourage folks to, engage on both sides of the fence. Some vendors are afraid to put things in there that, hey, there's something messed up with your requirement, or hey, why are you doing this way? Or I recommend that you change that. Please do. Even during solicitation, that's when we can change things. We can actually fix things and make it better. We are listening, even though we're not out doing the webinar. We might be in, it might appear to be a black box because, then we do take on a formal communication role. And I know a lot of program offices would like to talk to vendors during that time, but really we're not supposed to, just because, we want to make sure that we don't even give the impression that there's an unfair advantage somewhere along the line.
Got it. I have one more question before I go into the two questions I ask everybody. So this is my one more question. Let's talk a little bit about Q&A. Having spent my entire career on the contracting side, I love Q&A because I think it is like your one chance to get really smart and creative of shaping RFPs. If you ask questions in the right way to kind of imply that this needs to change or that needs to change, and then if you studiously read what the government gives back to you, then you can change the way you are going to respond to be create like a better response and for a better solution, for a better, so you can kind of like closer align to what the government's looking for. So I used to love doing Q&A. From your perspective, do you find it to be more helpful or hurtful, or what can contractors do better in the Q&A process?
I would say yes. I would always encourage folks to speak up as opposed to holding back, especially because it's a good indicator to us that there's something amiss, perhaps with the requirement or with the RFP itself. If there are 5 vendors telling me the same thing, I'm going to give that a lot more weight than one vendor that could just be, cranky that day. We will explore all of that feedback, even if it's just the one vendor. But if you have a grouping of vendors that are all saying the same thing, especially when it's a technical issue, as a CO, I'm not an expert, but if my experts on the contractor side are all pointing the same direction, then I know, hey, we need to sit down with the program office and really iron this out to make sure there isn't ambiguity that will end up in the contract. And vendors are going to price for risk. And I think we'd all rather have that ironed out before it goes into the contract.
Yeah. No, for sure. Absolutely. I really appreciate that. when you get a bunch of requests for extensions, are you pretty like, what is the contracting officer like? How do you feel on your side when you get like that request for, oh, can you extend? Can you extend? Because then it adds time to the whole process. So do you feel like you can be pretty generous with that? Or did you already build it into the process and expect it back in the beginning? Or how does that work?
Typical CO answer is it depends. So it really does depend. Of course, if we have extra time and the program office is not under the gun, and we have that luxury available to us, yeah, we'll be as generous as we can. I'm definitely one to lean forward on that. As I mentioned before, if all the vendors are kind of telling me the same thing, like if I have 10 vendors saying we need more time, then I'm going to give that a lot of weight and say, hey, maybe there wasn't sufficient time to give a good response. And, if we can afford them, even maybe not what they're asking for, but any additional time that we can provide, I think is important. And in addition to that, I will say, any shop that I've been in on the contracting side, we do try to build in time around holidays so that we're not asking for a response that requires work over the holiday. Granted, we can't stop a company from choosing to work over a holiday, even though they've been given that time, but we are cognizant of that. And we are humans too, and we try to consider our vendors when we're planning for some of those acquisition milestones.
Oh, I've seen some of those memes too. I think I stopped celebrating Christmas altogether for like a good 10 years because of it too. But it's you can plan as much as you want, but the tough part is
Right.
that once you get the ball rolling on a government acquisition, things kind of happen at a cadence that kind of one comes after the other comes after the other. And if there are things that happen in between, then it could throw your timeline off. And if it's around the holidays, like what can you do, right?
Right. Yeah, you could have all the best intentions in the world and still kind of get in that spot. But we do try to be mindful of that.
That's
All
actually
things
good to know.
considered.
I do appreciate you saying that. Awesome, cool. Well, let me get into the pieces I ask everybody. The first two questions I ask is, what two pieces of advice would you give somebody watching you as advice? Because I'm sure there's a lot of ladies and not just ladies, but guys and gals looking at you being like, I want to be a contracting officer when I grow up. What two pieces of advice would you give them?
Create your non-negotiables. Ever since I was a baby CO, I was a stickler about making sure that I took a lunch break.
Yeah.
Even if that just means a quick walk outside, depending on what's going on, take time for yourself. For me personally, when I shut my laptop at night, I shut it. Unless there's a life or limb emergency going on, I really do pride myself in putting my family and myself first. Because if I don't shut it off, if I don't turn it off, then it's never going to happen. It's so easy to just stay plugged in, especially since COVID. I saw a lot of CEOs burn out pretty hard because there was no longer that barrier of going into the office and then going home and having that downtime. People were just staying on at all hours, and it can become an unhealthy addiction. Most CEOs love to work hard, but you've got to set your left and right laterals.
That makes sense. I love it. What else? That was number one. See, there's two.
Oh, I have to have two.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I would say whatever it is that you love, spend some time on it during your day to day. For me, it's humor. I have to laugh, and because a lot of the time, if we don't laugh, we'll cry. But I like to make working fun because we spend so much time working. If we can't be human beings and be our authentic selves and enjoy a giggle here and there, as long as it's appropriate for work, that's a big part of my workday as well.
Yeah, I was actually convinced recently that GovCon needed I should say GovCom needed a comedian, because there's a lot of things that happen in this industry that you can't make up. It's very funny, a lot of things very funny. Like, for example, if you go to a DoD event, there's a line for the men's room, but not the women's room for the first time ever. So like there's a lot of these things, and I read a book called Humor Seriously, done by a bunch of Harvard smarty pants scientists, where they were actually studying the effects of humor in leadership, which I think you're tracking down the right thing, because it showed that people who were funny were considered better leaders. So I really like that answer. Okay.
Cool.
Next question was, what is your superpower, Catherine, and how did you find it?
I would say getting stuff done. Um,
Yes.
I found my calling when I did the Emerging Leaders program at Interior, when I was at Interior Business Center. It's a great organization, by the way, steeped in compliant and
Not even imagine what a university.
streamlined processes.
Dang.
But anyhow, they have a fantastic leadership program, and I personally, I'm able to home in on roadblocks and clear them, and nothing makes me happier than making tangible progress. So really figuring out that I have a kind of uncanny ability to zoom out to the 1,000-foot view and see things from a higher level, but also drill way back down into operational knowledge to actually take something, figure out where's that roadblock and how do I like put some C4 in it and blow it up and clear the way for my folks to get their work done. So
I love it. I love it. Cool. Well, what's next for you? Like, imagine a year, 2, 3, 4 down the road. Are you looking at SES? Are you looking at, I know that that's a path for contracting officers, right? The SES path is there?
possibly, I would say I'm not seeking that out. If someone asked me to fulfill a role, I'd probably consider stepping up to support. But really, I'm happy where I am. I feel like I found my work family. I really enjoy the folks that I work with, and there's just so much opportunity to make strides, especially in the acquisition field, and especially with all of these robotic processes and AI solutions coming online. I really want to try to leverage some of that to help CEOs get rid of the rote tasks and really think about the bigger issues that we're hired to solve.
Oh, okay. So this brings up another question. Now that you mentioned that, uh, and we didn't clear this before, we started recording, but when it comes to the AI tools, are you kind of what stance are you or the agency taking as far as like testing stuff out and trying it? And along those lines, like, are you guys partner with a CDAO and trade winds and pulling things from there? Or are you guys looking to buy your own tools and try it like some other agencies, or like what's the haps?
So Commerce does have a review body for AI, generative AI projects. Standard AI can be included as an element in IT projects, but the generative AI piece does require clearance and approval, basically a business case, and get that cleared and then work on a project. I would say I think that stuff is still in its infancy. It's coming along. But, I am keeping an eye towards following the lead of the CIO and what they decide and how they're going to manage that, to make sure that, we don't have this shadow IT kind of stuff sneaking into procurement, that, we are buying stuff that is safe and approved and has the right security measures involved. Yeah, so that's to be seen. But I'm looking forward to learning a lot more about it and supporting that on the contracting side of the house.
I think it has to start from, like the CIO side of it, making their decisions and their path forward. But the
Mhm.
excitement and the interest has to come from your side, right? Because if you don't bring that like innovative lean or the interest or the excitement to it, then they would probably spend their time solving different problems, right? But because this is such an exciting time, and I think a lot of what CEOs have done over, the lifespan of the existence has been a lot of that rote kind of thing. Can you imagine what would you do with your time if you could solve the big problems? You'd have industry days every day.
Right. Yeah. And I used to ask the question. I used to get very annoyed. Yeah, I think one of your questions was how can government do better? And one of my answers typically is stop chasing shiny things and
Oh
choose
my God.
achievable goals.
That was literally one of my first podcasts. I talked to Mike Whistler, who was the chief procurement officer for the SEC for a long time. And he said he went on a whole tangent about shiny objects.
Yes. Yeah. Don't small achievable not necessarily small, they could be big, but achievable goals, setting ourselves up for success. Don't look for an RPA when your CEOs don't even have access to use Microsoft Project to do milestone plans. Like we got to walk before we run. But to your point, as far as the excitement behind it, I don't want to share much about it, but I do have an idea brewing and something in the works to help our acquisition folks in the generative AI realm. So I am exploring, and I will keep you posted on the progress there.
Well, if you wanted to have any kind of an industry day, somebody who's industry.
Very small scale, homegrown, but yeah, it could grow into more things. So
Very cool.
yeah,
Very cool. Well, I want to thank you for your time today.
absolutely.
As we draw the curtain on today's chapter of GovCom Unfiltered, I want to thank you for joining us on this remarkable journey through the intricate world of federal contracting. I'm Alexa Choi, and it's been an honor to navigate these stories of courage, innovation, and resilience with you. Until we meet again, keep pushing boundaries, exploring new horizons, and making your mark in the government contracting universe. Farewell for now, but not forever. Stay tuned for more adventures that await in the next episode of GovCom Unfiltered. Safe travels on your path to greatness, and remember, we are all on this journey together.